Salutations, denizens of the internet. I'm Firebite27, and today I've got a bit of a weird video planned for us all today, because, well, today's been a bit of, the week's been a bit of a rough week. Kind of, I've, it's hard to say. Basically, today, I think we're going to start trying to design a board game, because why the heck not? It's not like I'm making a ton of money from my actual job, and I think it would be kind of fun. So, well, I'll wait for a few people to get actually into the chat set before I actually get started with this, because this is gonna be something that I'm gonna have a bit of fun with. The idea that I had was actually based on one of my drawing pads. I've shown you my drawing pads before. I do a bunch of like Kamen Rider inspired art, but one of my recent Kamen Rider inspired stories that I've been working on is called Rescue Devil Max. I got the idea for the name from Ultraman Max specifically, and basically this is a superhero themed around cryptids. In this case, the sky rods, which were basically a visual phenomenon that occurred when essentially an insect's movement and motion blur matched the shutter speed of a camera to the point where it elongated the insect into like this tube with bumps coming off of it. And I thought, hey, you know what? That could actually make something pretty cool for a tokusatsu hero to use. Once again, I am in the church space that I used during last week's stream. Thank you again to the church that has let me do this. I claim no other affiliation with the church beyond just using their spaces, mostly because I don't want them to be manically embarrassed of what I do in here, or anything that I've said in here. All thoughts and opinions I express in these videos are my own, after all. But Max is based off of the Sky Rods. You might recognize them if you were a fan of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and have recently seen part 6 in the anime. Basically, the way that Max, or technically the person inside the armor, Rory, uses the Sky Rods is they're little drones that he can reconfigure like the microbots from Big Hero 6. Turn them into ladders or buckets they can use to rescue people, and also like tripods for rescue in sewer areas. Like whenever there's like an earthquake or like people are trapped underground, they're actually like little tripods that they build in order to evacuate people. They basically hoist them up on it, and that's what he can do with the sky rods. And he does this using the Omnires, a wrist-mounted device based off of Ben 10's Omnitrix that allows him to turn into Max, and also between his various different forms as Max, and perform his most powerful attack, the Quasar Punch, which you can see right here. It causes the bits on the Omnires to flare out and then fire an engine from the back, rocketing his fist forward, but it burns out the machine very quickly. We've also got some like side characters I can show you. We've got his sort of like backup hero, Bishop, based off of the Flatwoods monster from cryptid lore here in America. I actually chose these specifically because I wanted to make this a tokusatsu series inspired by Japanese media, and the Sky Rods and the Flatwoods monster are the two most popular cryptids over in Japan that come from over here in the West. So henceforth, the weird choice to choose the main two riders. And then we've got the tertiary character who is also based on a Japanese urban legend, Ingrid Cold. She is based on both the Grinning Man from American mythology, which is related to the Mothman sightings, but also she's based on Lady Hashaku, who is basically an 8-foot-tall woman who spells doom to anyone she encounters, and also has a very interesting noise that she makes. Paw, paw, paw. So I decided to combine the two into a single character named Ingrid Cold. She's basically a member of an alien species called the Invezret, and they always have the smiles on their faces in order to put people at ease when they're doing business with them. She's based on Lady Hashaku, and she does the paw, pull, but it's like more of a cough that comes to her because she has trouble speaking human languages. So I figured it would be cool to like incorporate different parts of the mythology into the story. But anyways, I'm getting far off track because I'm turning this story into a board game. We're going to be calling it Night Chasers, Local Legends. And the basic premise is that you are stepping into the shoes of one of the heroes from the series, or one of the monsters. I've got a few of those sketched up too, and even one that's been colored. You have Gaster, a monster based off of the Snallygaster and visually inspired by Vilgax from Ben 10. This series has a lot of Ben 10 in it, which honestly, it's kind of an inbred pipeline in a way because Ben 10 took a lot of its inspiration not only from Dial H for Hero, but also it took a lot of inspiration from Ultraman. You might not know this, but Waybig from Ben 10, he's basically an Ultra. He's got the mohawk, he's got the laser that he fires like this. He is a tribute to Ultraman. And in fact, there was even an episode in the original where Ben decided was pretending he was like a superhero, like a normal superhero named Ultra Ben, and that sure sounds similar to Ultraman if you ask me. But anyways, the inbred pipeline aside, we've got Gaster, who is based off of the Snallygaster. We've got Tagoko, which is based off of the Kofu alien sightings from Japan. Again, I really kind of want this to appeal to the Japanese because they did play a big part in what inspired me to make this in the first place. And then we have one that's based off of a Louisianan cryptid, the Rugaru, named Garu. He's a swamp monster who has he's going to be like the first monster that's encountered in this story, and he's going to have like explosive gas abilities. Also, thanks to Kit Catastrophe for letting me in on a little bit of Louisianan culture, or specifically Cajun culture. When I asked him about the Rougarou statue that's in like a zoo or some kind of museum down in Louisiana, he told me that it was that they call it the Kuyan. And then he went on to explain to me that apparently Kuyan is Cajun for asshole, but it's sort of like also can be used as like a term of endearment to people. Like the C word in Australia. I'm afraid to say it on camera, and because I'm in a place of worship, though. Obviously, I'm not totally opposed to swearing in the Lord's house to just say the word asshole. But basically, the Rougarou is one of these like sort of monsters that I want to incorporate. I want to avoid going to the obvious ones like Sasquatch and the Loch Ness Monster, mostly because like, yeah, we've seen them all before. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if there have been superheroes and there's a bunch of media based on them. But in this case, I wanted to go more obscure. But this might have a bad effect of making it a bit too obscure for people to get into. But don't worry, I plan on incorporating a lot of the Western cryptids and like Eastern cryptids. I'm going to mix them together. I'm going to try and have a healthy spread of characters and creature designs. Like, I definitely want to do the Fresno Nightcrawlers. There's actually going to be a transformation for Max where he basically turns the Fresno Nightcrawlers into shoulder cannons, which awesome. I definitely really want to do that. Then we've got the Grafton monster, which turns into some firefighting equipment. We're going to incorporate that into the board game, actually. My plan is for the board game is you play it in 3 steps. The 3 steps are, first is the chaser phase. Basically, the monsters that your characters have to fight are causing trouble, and there are reports that are coming in via various news outlets that place the various monsters throughout the board along with like other unrelated incidents. Like, let's say some old man just happened to see a chipmunk running across his yard and assumed it was some kind of monster. That's something that could actually be revealed during the first phase of the game. Or for example, if you're let me just send this link to a few more friends so they can maybe join. Or if you're or if you're, or if there's like or if like someone accidentally blew up something during a science experiment, that might be reported, and that might well, that's exactly what it's going to be. But then once as you actually find one of the monsters, no, that's that. The first section is the seeker segment. The second segment is going to be the chaser segment. That's when the aliens slash monsters are revealed to the board, and now you and the other players have to chase them around in order to make sure that you can stop them before the night's up. You will earn points in this phase by averting damage to the local population, such as if, say, one of the players who's playing as the monsters, like ends up setting a trap for you, or like ends up causing a distraction. If you make sure that no one gets hurt during that distraction, you will earn points. Same goes with preventing like any damage to the surrounding area. Like if one of the monsters tries to set off a forest fire, you can change to an appropriate form and then extinguish the forest fire and get points for that. I'm thinking that basically the way that things will work is if there's like damage to the environment that you manage to avert, that gets you 100 points. If the first phase also awards you points, like if you depending on how many incidents you investigate, you'll earn investigation tokens, and those are each worth 50 points. The like actually averting crises and averting accidents, those worth 100 points. Hello there, Genesis. Welcome to the show. I hope I'll catch you up to speed. Basically, I am doing I'm going to be making a board game based on a story idea I had called Rescue Devil Max. And the board game will basically follow you and a bunch of other masked tokusatsu inspired superheroes as you try to chase down a bunch of monsters that might be trying to cause havoc. And everyone is based off of urban legends and cryptids, which are things that I really love. And so, yeah, I'm going to be designing the board for that today. And basically, it's going to be played in 3 phases. There's a seeking phase where basically the monsters and the villain players are hidden, and they're shown as like tokens for investigation. Basically, there are incidents that have been reported in the town of Ballard, Utah, which is on the border of Skinwalker Ranch, which is like a paranormal hotbed here in the U.S. So that's why I chose that particular area of the U.S. But basically, you're going to have to investigate those incidents. Once as you like find the monsters or all the monsters are found, every other unrelated incident token that could be found, like say just like a gas leak started, it made like a crazy flame in the middle of the ground that it looked like a ghost. If you investigate that, you'll earn 50 points for it. Same goes with if you actually manage to save it, and like but once it's like all the monsters are found, that activates the chase phase of the game, where you basically have to stop the monsters from escaping, either by building the monster players will either be building a shrine, and their game loop is going to be a bit more card based, whereas the heroes are going to be a bit more die focused. Basically, the way the heroes will get around and get through accidents and whatnot is by rolling dice in order to transform between their various forms. Now, some characters have a few forms, which means that changing their forms on the fly can be a bit difficult for them. Like, let's go back to Max. Max has 6 different forms. There's his base form, then there's a form that he can use to firefight, then there's a form that he can use to swim, one that he can use in order to save people in cave-ins, one that you can use in order to like save people that are in like mountain areas and might be in trouble there. But basically, you're incentivized to play the tokusatsu hero. You're changing between forms in order to save people, and you're rewarded points based on how you do it. And it's not to say that all of the forms are useless either. What I'd love to do is like include like a Blu-ray with a bunch of story animations for this with the finished product. Of course, that would take like a massive Kickstarter, and considering I really haven't proven myself, I don't think I'd be able to pull it off. At least not right now, and not with my current following. I definitely could be able to do this someday. It's kind of a pipe dream at the moment, but hey, I really want to do this. But anyways, you're basically chasing the monsters across the board and saving lives, and then at the end of everything, you get tallied up based on how many of each task you did. If you saved a lot of, if you and like certain characters will have like reputations prior to the board game. So if they have a very negative reputation, saving people will actually increase their reputation and get you double points from them. Of course, these are like if you or some characters might like get like end up seeing it, or some characters might like pick up a product from a local business, and that gets you extra points in that way because people sort of like associate you with that brand or something like that. I don't know. The mechanics are honestly, I'm worried that the mechanics might be a little complicated at the moment, but the mechanics are the ones that are probably just going to take the most time to iron out the kinks in, you know? Honestly, this is going to be a real long-term project if I decide to follow through with it. But I am really, really hoping that I ends up like taking off and like getting off the ground because I don't know, it would be a lot of fun. I think it would be a lot of fun to just have this Tokusatsu inspired cryptid project. But anyways, let me just copy this link and send it to one more friend, and then I will get started on some actual art. Because let's be real, what is a board game without a board? Alrighty, here is some paper and a pencil and a circle tool, and we will start on the board. I hope you can still hear me, everyone, because I have never used this. I used this camera briefly during my last live stream when I was setting up the 3D printer. My friend Dale managed to lend it to me for the sake of showing the 3D printer, which, by the way, yes, that is the 3D printer running in the background. I'm sorry if it's been a little distracting this whole time. But anyways, we'll start out with the board. And the way the board will work is that you will have these dots. These dots are the spaces on the boards to which you can move on the board. But in between spots, you might come across another smaller dot. And this is a hazard point. Basically, each character will have a set number of stats, at least as far as I'm envisioning it so far. And these hazard points on the board are basically where your stats are going to come into play mostly. If these will have obstacles in them. Now they might be a fallen tree, maybe a pile of rocks, or they might be something as terrifying as like a small army of minion monsters sent out by the villains. It honestly really depends. These are just hazard tokens though. Or like maybe your character had to avoid running into a knot deer, which is another cryptid, by the way. The knot and that's but basically it's going to be something that might slow you down. However, each card for these hazards will have a stat on it that will basically allow you to overcome it and continue your movements. You'll basically have 4 stats. You'll have speed. Let me just SPD, Power Rangers to the rescue. You'll have speed, strength, endurance, and agility. Now, these three right here. Now, then this one right here, the speed, that's how many of these spaces you can move on a turn. Then we have strength, which dictates like how, if you like your character gets trapped by a hazard or something, this is how strong they need to be in order to break free, or they need to spend the rest of their turn without their movements, or they lose the rest of their turn trying to dig themselves out. There we go. That's what I meant. Then we have endurance. This is basically going, like, if a villain attacks your character, this is what's going to save you. You'll basically have to, if their strength number is lower than your endurance number, then it doesn't really affect you too bad. Then we have the agility stat, and that's basically like your acrobatic skills that allow you to dodge over obstacles. But anyways, as I was saying, these numbers will range, I think, from like 1 to maybe 12. I don't know, honestly. Like I said, the mechanics are the last thing I'm going to worry, or the thing I'm going to spend the most time working out, because I want this game to be a lot of fun for all of you. That is, if you choose to play it. Once as I like get out the Kickstarter or whatever I do for this, I really want to do a Kickstarter. But at the same time, like, I know that YouTuber products don't have the best track record, like especially the Feastables. Ugh. And people were surprised when I was surprised when I found out that Mr. Beast was actually a terrible person. But yeah, each character might also have some quirks too to their movement. For example, Ingrid, the Hashiku character, will not be able to move through water. There's going to be certain shortcuts that are only accessible in water forms, because like it's a big thing that bothers me about a lot of tokusatsu is just the fact that there's no underwater fights. I get they're kind of hard to film and whatnot, but at the same time, I'd really think it would be cool if they had more water fight scenes, and I want to be the change. But anyways, let me just quickly sketch out the rest of this area, because this game is going to work a lot like Last Defense, an absolutely charming and goofy as hell board game that I got to play with Dale a few months back. The basic conceit of the game is that there are some B-movie monsters wreaking havoc around town, and you have to rescue the scientists that are necessary in order to stop each threat. There we go. That's another hazard spot. And of course, this is let's see. Okay, so this is how the game is going to then be set up. In order to the area that you'll chase these monsters through, and this is going to be like a pretty big board game, mind you. The monsters you're going to chase are going to be in several different areas. You're going to have a we'll call this one the marsh. This is going to be like a water area, and it's one of the few places that Ingrid and Cold can't chase you. So if you're a villain, hiding out in the swamp might be a good idea for a time period, just until she like moves away and chases someone else. But as the monster, you have to collect resources in order to make your getaway, whether it be on an alien spaceship or via some mystical ritual. There we go. No, actually. The game layout is inspired by the game I just mentioned, Last in Defense. Let me just pull it up for you. Last in Defense board game. There we go. Last Defense. Yeah, let me just screen share this with y'all. Here. Nope, that's not the button. There we go. It's this game. Last Defense. The way you played it is by moving your characters around this board right here, and basically ever so often the position of these crises would change, and that's basically what I'm basically going to be taking that, but combining it with D&D. Basically, there's going to be a bit more number mashing and whatnot, you know. The layout is much more inspired by Last Defense, not NES Godzilla. I've never actually played NES Godzilla, so maybe I'll look into it at some point. Maybe I won't. Who knows? But this area of the map is the marsh, and that's going to be like it's like my plans are actually to have the board be way bigger than what I'm making it out to be. Problem is, I don't have the most space to make detail here. So forgive me if it looks a little ramshackle. Mm-hmm. However, these areas are also going to be pretty unique. There's going to be like 5 of them, and I'm even debating the promise of a potential expansion pack that adds on new areas. Like one of the dream areas I'd love to do is like a final boss area with the main villain of this entire series, Katarlok. Katarlok is another Invezret, much like his granddaughter Ingrid, but he's someone who doesn't. You see, the Invezret in this series are going to be like these very capitalism inspired villains, but not in the usual way. These are going to be people who are straight up war criminal villains. They basically incited a civil war on Bishop's home planet. I might have. Yeah, let me just get this sled back in. Eh, eh. Come on, go in your hole. Eh. Oh God, and I seem to have no trouble. I seem to have a lot of problems with holes. There we go. There we go. Anyways, as I was saying, I'd really like him to be the sort of like final boss that the characters have to fight, and like an optional like encounter that you can like choose to add. I really want to like add on this sort of like the D&D concept of modules. Like there's a group of monsters that you can fight, and the cool part would be like mixing and matching different parts of the board. I'd really like to make the board modular, like the old perler bead plates that I used to put beads onto. Those would be a lot of fun to like use as an inspiration here. Okay, but like there's going to be like I have like plans to like incorporate some references to other government conspiracies in the monsters. Like I really want to do a Men in Black that's also a tribute to Buckaroo Banzai, since my dad loves Buckaroo Banzai, and I think it would just make him really happy to see. Oh, I see all those references you slipped in there. But yeah, I'm kind of iffy on it, mostly because my dad doesn't really seem to dig reference humor like that. Uh, it's weird. Anyways, but like there's some other characters that other like tokusatsu inspired stories that I could fit into that universe pretty well. If like I wanted to like take on characters from like other stories, I have one named Henshin Devil Legion. There's one that I ditched a while back that I actually submitted to a Tokusatsu Ideas showcased by Thomas Jujubee. If you know him, if you know Tokusatsu, you probably know Tom. But basically, he featured my pitch for a series called Guardians Wild in his Tokusatsu pitches video, his second one. And that was one of the most weird, that's one of the weirdly highest honors I've ever had, is just having my creative work featured in someone else's video. But yeah, I'd really love to work in that whole story because, like, oh, there's an idea. Using Patreon for funds. That's a great idea. I could it'd definitely be like good to like long term. Is like I really want to like 3D print a lot of the test stuff, and I think that might be a cool reward to mail out to fans who want to support this board game. But first of all, I really want to just get this. My first focus right now is just like making an actual board and pieces that so I can just like test things out, you know? Like have a playground where people can like test the mechanics and give me feedback. It's actually really funny because I actually asked around at work. I actually asked around at my job, and a lot of my friends seemed like they'd be on board with like testing it out. There's actually one guy, Jason, which, hey, if you're watching this right now, Jason, shout out to you. He said that he and his friends love buying board games from Goodwill and like using them to test out, like, and just like playing them for an hour or two at a time and multiplayer for like, you know what? Here's a philosophical thing for you all. When I think of gaming, I don't just think of like video games. I think of board games too. I think video games and board games both share enough in common to be warranted to warrant like fitting underneath the same umbrella. Because like you've got game mechanics, you've got quality assurance, you've got modeling, you've got artwork. There's a lot of stuff that goes into developing both a board game and just like a video game, which I think that's something good. I think it's good to like consider them both gaming. Anyways, this is the area that I'm going to call Brown Mesa. This is going to be the government lab area where it's a lot of like experimental technology might be held. It might also contain a lot of parts for the characters to use. There are also going to be like some other characters that I haven't designed yet. I really want to do one villain that's or like a hero character who like transforms by like basing her powers off of like monsters that eat really weird stuff. Like I want to give her make her base form the monster that lives under the bed eating people's socks. I think that would be pretty fun. Like just have her like just like and like the way I envision like her transformation device working is like it's like the Genesis driver from Gaim, where you've got like a monster mouth in the middle and like you push it, you like insert the item, lock it in, and then like push in the little like lever, and then like as it like slowly pulls back, the mouth starts biting up and down on it. That would be so much fun. But like I said, this is the franchising part of my pipe dream. I don't think I'm actually going to get this far. Is like making like actual role play items. Oh yeah, I know that Toby Fox's Undertale started out as a Kickstarter. Also, congratulations to all the Deltarune fans. I will be joining you shortly. Or not shortly, but sometime in the near future. I really want to live stream the Deltarune chapters now that they're all out. But we're going to have to wait at least until Friday, if not until next week, because guess what? I don't have a lot of money right now, unfortunately. So, yeah, we're going to wait on that for a bit. But we will be getting another return of the Untitled Gaming streams. You can bet on it. And in fact, the Deltarune is actually what made me want to start doing Untitled Gaming streams in the first place. Because over a year ago, I sent out like a message on my Discord server, which, if you don't know, I have a Discord server, and which basically said, "Hey, would you guys be interested in watching me play on Deltarune?" And like a lot of people said that they would be. So maybe it's not too far away. It's definitely not out of the question. I'll say that's for sure. And Lord knows that I have like done my fair share of referencing Deltarune in the past, especially with that explosion. I have gotten so much explosion out of that bit crushed explosion that Toby Fox included in Chapter 2. Yeah, you all know the one I'm talking about, probably. I've used it so frequently. Let me just. My instance. Deltarune. Yeah, this one. I've gotten so much mileage out of that explosion sound effect and the green screen effect for it. I tell you what. Yeah, it's been so much fun using that. I love how Toby can just like use a random stock explosion like that, and suddenly everyone use online can treats it as a meme of some kind. Honestly, Toby is either a genius or like the most unintentionally hilarious person on the planet Earth. Not gonna say this is absolutely true all the time, because there are definitely people out there who are creatives who don't have autism, but like it wouldn't surprise me if he's on the spectrum somewhere, or if he has ADHD. But let me be clear, I wouldn't be surprised if Toby hasn't been diagnosed for either of those things. Then don't like take anything that I'm saying here as like factual. Then, because like I am not an expert, I cannot diagnose people, but at the same time, I have noticed that autistic people tend to be like pretty funny, and also like a lot of them are pretty devoted creators. So you never know. And if Toby gets tested and he tests positive for having autism and is somewhere on the spectrum, then hey, that's great. Another creator that I can say I can relate to on some level. And Lord knows that like okay, it's hard for me to talk about my experiences as someone with ADHD without talking about my time in the special ed program. And let me just say, without I don't just like want to like save this as something I can talk about like a dedicated video, but my time in special ed was rough. I think one of the worst things I remember about it was just there was one school I went to that had an integration program with the mainstream school across the street from us. And during every lunch, without fail, none of the mainstream students wanted to sit with us, except for one kid who also was. I'm also pretty sure he was on the spectrum too. Again, I don't want to assume anything about anyone because I am not someone who is like, I'm not qualified to like say whether or not someone has autism. So I always ask whenever I see someone who I think might be on the spectrum, hey, is that guy on the spectrum? Like I ask someone who they know. And usually I'm right. I've spent a lot of my life around people with autism. So, I'm no expert at seeing that or like, because like sometimes I have accidentally gotten it wrong. And that's good to remember. It's why you ask. Like there was one time where I assumed that someone with Down syndrome was on the spectrum, which they're completely different conditions. And that's why you ask. I always adopt the policy that you always ask first before you make assumptions. Lord knows that our world would be a lot better off if we abided by that more frequently. Still, that none of that heavy stuff is nearly as bad as the padded cells. Never gonna ask anyone to be perfect. I'm just gonna ask the people like acknowledge that they are imperfect and take that as like and take that as a sign to improve. Like when it comes to asking for help, because like I used to be so bad at asking for help because I was convinced that people would think that I was weak for doing it. They're like asking people for clarification. But no, it doesn't make you weak. It only makes you considerate. Anyways, um going off a track for a little bit here. Uh y'all want to see some of my 3D printing that I've done recently? Because I've got some on hand if you'd like to see it. This is actually something that I made that I made completely from scratch. I called it the Psyblade Saber. Unfortunately, this isn't exactly what it was supposed to look like. There were supposed to be like some holes like going up and down the blade, but it didn't print out. That's life with a 3D printer for you, I say. Sometimes it turns out looking exactly how you want it to, and other times it's a bit of a mess. Who am I kidding? A bit of a mess is kind of my type. Or, well, it is the type that I am. You know what? Never mind. But yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't bring any Transformers along to test it with, apart from Omega Prime. But it feels a little loose in his hands, so or something I should probably adjust for in the next version. Oh, but here's something that I actually printed out from Thingiverse. Uh, Green Heart Spear from Neptunia. I have no idea what Neptunia is. I hear it's a video game series, thanks to a friend who works at GameStop. That's all I really need to know is that there are cool weapons from that series that I can 3D print for Transformers, because I just kind of like giving Transformers fun weapons. Currently working on some hatchets in the moment. There were actually let me show you like an example of a few failed 3D prints. Because for as good as I am, there are still some circumstances where I mess up. The last thing I was trying to print out before my hatchets were some bow weapons. Unfortunately, though, well, those actually look pretty cool. Unfortunately, though, here's the problem. It printed the underside okay. It went okay for a bit. Then it turned into scaffolding at some point. I am so perplexed. I don't understand slicing programs, honestly. They're so weird. They follow their own path, it feels a lot of the time. Oh, but what's even worse is when your entire print devolves into a pile of plastic pulled pork. These were my first attempts at the Neptunia weapons. So, yeah, you always gotta be careful when adjusting in the bed, I tell you. Always need to be careful. Anyways, enough of that random aside. Let's just cordon off this area of the map. And let's see here. What do I want to call this one? Hmm. I know. The ranch. Yes, this is going to be a Skinwalker Ranch reference. As I said, this was all largely inspired by Skinwalker Ranch, so who knows? Maybe I'll even include like a Skinwalker as a playable character. Might actually be a little bit interesting if might actually be a little bit interesting if like I did a oh god, like a neutral character that you could play as that's a skinwalker who can either be a good guy or a bad guy depending on who you're playing as. I do also want to take some inspiration from another board game that I played with Dale. I can't remember what it was called. It's something like a mansion on the hill, dark mansion on the hill. Basically, it's a game that comes with like a bunch of endings and begin and like backstories and like it includes like story endings for like any possible scenario that you could come up with. I just uh, I just I really want to do that. But at the same time, I know reading's a pain in the ass for literally everyone and their grandmother. It's kind of why comics aren't really like that bad. That's more the problem of DC and Marvel not doing anything good. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, like reading's kind of a pain in the butt that a lot of people would rather not deal with. So I'd really like to avoid putting the stories into a text format because that limits the appeal. But at the same time, like I don't see a way to animate all of the characters to the quality that I'd like to animate them at. A big part of this is just I'm really a bad perfectionist. I I want so hard to make the things that I want to make quality that I get so wrapped up in trying to make them perfect and it's not sustainable. Besides, not everything has to be perfect, and I often lose sight of that. Then again, Glitch Productions ends up putting out some pretty good stuff. So who knows? Maybe I'll contract to them for their services. They might not be opposed to doing this. It would be pretty fun to like have them like make it honestly, I'd love to make a movie like a series for Glitch Productions. Like it wouldn't even have to be Rescue Devil Max. It could be like any of my stories, really. But the problem is, like, they don't really do multi-season series apart from like, God, what was it? Grid Runners, Edge Runners, something diverse. I don't know. It was that video game one that was like featured by M64, whoever they are. I don't know them. All I really remember them for are Amazing Digital Circus and God, what was the other one that came beforehand? Amazing Digital Circus and Murder Drones. That was the other one. Really love Murder Drones. Really wish that it would get a second season already, but whatever. I'd really like to get people who can do that kind of stuff to animate roars because like that would be so fun having like a character just like I'd really just like to have a bunch of like indie artists work with me in order to make it an animated like 3D. I'd really okay. Here's the thing. If I'm going to make this series, it's either going to be in live action or alternatively, so we can save on effects budget, it's going to be 3D CGI, baby. Because that would be the best way to communicate like everything that I want in the story. The weight of the characters and their impacts. The way that everything looks and feels. I really like to I don't want to make something cartoony or something that feels Western. I want it to feel gr- physically grounded I want the animation to feel physically grounded, but I don't want it to be like grounded. Whatever. God, I hope I'm tasting real sugar in there. But anyways, back over to the board game that I'm drawing up. I really hate the fact that I can't use multiple cameras here. I'd so love to be able to do that. Okay, town. Then put a few circles over here. There we go. If anyone else has any other questions they'd like to ask me, I am more than open to answering them. Oh, and don't forget, we have a bit of a celebratory anniversary today because the first chapter of She Who Stalks the Dungeon, that little webcomic I posted about a few months ago, actually just wrapped up its first chapter. So, woo! Hooray for finishing up the first chapter, me. Something I'd really like to get now that I have a working 3D printer again is I'd really, really love to get my hands on a plastic recycler that turns old PLA like this into new filament. That way I wouldn't have to worry about wasting so much of my stuff on it. But the filament recyclers that I've found online cost upwards of $1,300. It's not exactly sustainable if you're creating it on a small scale like I am. Now, if I were an industrial like process and like making 3D printing objects available by the order, I would definitely get that filament recycler because it would be a very worthwhile investment. But when it's just me making filament or prints with it, it's not worthwhile. Let's see here. What are we gonna name this one? The power plant. Now then, here is a little mechanic that I think would actually be pretty cool. That's exactly the plan, Genesis. I am going to start out with a smaller version that just it's not going to be like a video game, but it is going to be like a physical board game. I'm going to start out with a smaller version hence why I'm doing it on this scale rather than the big scale. That way I can work out the game mechanics. Like I said earlier, board games and video games are both gaming, and both basically follow the same process. You have to come up with the concept, get a rough model working, and then basically you have to shill it out to some people so they can test it and tell you what you need to change mechanically. But yeah, here's a mechanic that I'm actually certain is going to keep it up until the end of the game. When you're in pursuit of a monster, during the monster's turn, they can actually put a crisis card onto the board in the path that you have to follow them through. The crisis card is basically an accident that the monster has caused that could end up hurting a lot of people in universe. So you've got to make like any good superhero and stop it. And this will include some pretty hilarious incidents. Like we'll have one called the trolley problem, where the villain had one of the monsters has sent an empty freight car down the tracks towards a family in like let's say a Ford Pinto. A Ford Pinto, and you have to stop the train car from hitting the Ford Pinto. As I was saying, you have to stop this train car from hitting the family in the Ford Pinto. And the way you do that is each character has like a different form that they can change that does something different. For example, Max has his cave crawler armor. The cave crawler armor, let me just pull it up for you since I have it in this notebook. This is the cave crawler Robuddy. It's basically a little machine that hobbles around and provides support to the hero. And it transforms into this armor, the cave crawler armor. The cave crawler armor is basically like a heavy duty lifting unit. These like shoulder cannons unfold into support beams like they used in Transformers 1 in order to support the mine. And that's how the main character, and that's basically the way that you stop the trolley if you're Max. You basically have to roll the dice in order to transform into this form or into the firefighter form, the Grafton Sentinel, in order to basically stop this. Grafton Sentinel's transformation, the Grafton Sentinel is, well, it's a firefighting unit. It's got a special mechanical arm that allows it to support things. So that's how you'll basically be able to advert the crisis cards. And the villains will each get a certain number of crisis tokens that they can put onto the field. And basically, as soon as a character walks over them, the crisis is triggered and you have to roll for it. There we go. It's the final area. Now, does anyone want to help me christen this last area of the board with a name? I'm open to suggestions. Because I really don't have anything else that I could come up with. Let's see here. We've had a ranch, had a water area. Let's see here. what do we call the final area? We've got the power plant, the ranch. Oh, I've got one. The rest stop. And it's just like a post-apocalyptic Buc-ee's. Since it is set in Utah, and I'm pretty sure there's like a Buc-ee's in Utah. I really want to go to a Buc-ee's, and like it would be so funny to have like this abandoned Buc-ee's that like characters can wander into, because like there's gonna be at least one character who can like has a unique mechanic in that she can instead of like having forms, she can absorb pieces of technology from the environment, and that's how she uses the various abilities. So it would be fun. Oh, and here's another mechanic that I think might be fun. At the end of of all their turns, the villains can if the villains meet during the middle of in like the middle of summer, and they're not both fleeing from the hero. Or if the villains meet and they're fleeing from the hero, what they can actually do is, if the villains have a turn, they can actually exchange parts for like the various places that various mechanisms that they need in order to escape or or in order to avoid capture. I think that might be interesting. Then again, this is all very much a work in progress still. Let me just check on my 3D printer real quick. Okay, so far it is doing much better than the last prints I showed y'all. But yeah, that should be the explanation for the board and all of its areas. Basically, you're going to have 6 areas that you can go between, and there's going to be at least one like little area that where like one square on each that allows players to transfer between the different zones directly. I'm basically thinking like there's going to be a pipe system running all across the town from like the marsh, which is like an outlets area, to the rest stop, to the ranch, and the I don't know. It's definitely going to be interesting. I'll say that much. Especially if I decide to make expansions. The way I want to handle them though is like I don't want to make them like traditional board game expansions like for Fireball Island, which is yet another game that Dale and I have played with our friends, which is a lot of fun, by the way. Definitely, if you ever get a chance to play like a complete Fireball Island board game, I say go for it. You cannot go wrong. Well, you can go wrong, but it just takes great difficulty to go wrong with Fireball Island. It was actually pretty funny because, like, earlier today, the church is actually currently like holding its summer program. So, like a bunch of volunteers were back here with Dale and I, and they were all clearly playing like a board game of some kind. And like apparently it went pretty badly because someone might have been ritualistically, like the tour guide might have been ritualistically murdered, and they all went to jail for it. Apparently that's considered to be a happy ending. See, is anyone else going to show up? Okay, then. I'll show off a bit more of the artwork then. While we're all just sitting here. There's going to be the little robe. since this is going to be inspired by Power Rangers, there are going to be some like foot soldiers that will attack and that like you can score bonus points off of, maybe in like an expansion. We're going to have the Invezret Cyclopsites, basically these robotic drones that are controlled by the Invezrets and their servants on Earth. And each like squad of Invezrets is going to like require a die roll in order to defeat. Since like you're obviously playing as the main hero, you really can't lose to them. But if you don't have like more than enough strength, okay, here's the thing. A lot of these obstacles will cut your turn. The obstacle points on the map will cut your turn short. This is because even though you have a speed, if you don't have the proper score or stats in certain areas to overcome them without like difficulty, that means like your character just ran on through the obstacle. But if they didn't, then they get stuck for a turn or for the rest of your turn, depending on how. It's probably best if you get stuck on a trap during like your last movement, because then like they basically have no effect. However, they do offer better shortcuts, and I want to make the hazard spaces a risk versus reward type situation. You know, it's you need to well, you know, risk versus reward. Like I said, it's the game should always be making you it should. If I'm going to make a game, I want it to be one that makes everyone who plays it think. And that's probably one of the easiest ways to make people think is like giving them these sort of like options where they either need to choose left or right, up or down. You know, is it worth going through this path that might get me caught on a trap? Is it not worth getting caught on a trap? Is it worth walking over this spot which has a crisis token on it and potentially bagging myself some extra points? Is it just not worth it because I might not be able to roll that power up? I think that's what I want the game to ultimately be, is a game that makes you, the player, think. Also, we've got some another little monster that's going to appear later on. The alien Burke, based off of the nameless horror of Berkeley Square. And so yeah, that's really all I think I have to say today. There's no one watching now, so I think I'm gonna sign out. Well, until next time, guys, this is Firebright27, over and out. See you next stream.